Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Virginijus, today and yesterday my colleagues and I met in an informal video conference to kick off the German's EU Council presidency, and I'm really grateful that my colleagues accepted my invitation to an additional informal meeting. And my overall impression of the meeting, as well as our recent bilateral talks, is that the pandemic brought Europe closer together, and this is definitely applies for ministers of environment. The last 2 days have shown a high degree of agreement how important environment and climate are in the recovery of our economies. These EU ministers are a powerful team in the current debate about the future of the EU. In these extraordinary times, it is crucial for me to create as many opportunities as possible for us to talk, even it is through digital means. For over 60 years, our Europe has thrived above all on personal interactions. Our culture, knowledge, innovations and shared values are shaped by our curiosity and our enjoyment of diversity, by mutual respect and trust, and by such a personal interaction as today. And yesterday, our common ground was evident. We all agreed that the climate and environmental crisis have lost none of their urgency. On the contrary, the coronavirus pandemic has shown us very clearly how vulnerable our economies and societies are with their reaction to external shocks caused by an enormous loss of biodiversity and natural areas. The measures taken to protect public health have unprecedented social and economic consequences in all our countries. For the recovery process, we agree that we have to maintain the balance between stabilizing and strengthening our weakened economy while enhancing future resilience and combating climate change and biodiversity loss. We are convinced that the cost of not taking any action would be too high for us and for future generations. In our joint call for a green recovery, we have emphasized that the objectives of the European Green Deal provide key guidance also for the recovery of the European economy. All EU environment ministers agree that it is essential for the design and the implementation of the multi-annual financial framework, the MFF, and the EU recovery plan to contribute substantially to the EU's climate and environmental objectives. Let me mention the global dimension of the debate on green recovery. Yesterday, at our meeting, we discussed with IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva how the EU can drive green recovery globally. We, as the German EU Council's presidency, have organized a side event taking place today at the high-level political forum. This year, the forum is also taking place virtually. We also discussed the pressing topic of digitalization and the environment. On the one hand, we have to steer digital technologies and infrastructure along environmentally compatible lines, even more so at times like this when we are so reliant on digital infrastructure. And on the other hand, we can use digital solutions as a lever for environmental protection and climate action. With the circular economy data space, we could enhance transparency for consumers and companies and the social and environmental conditions along the supply chains. This week, we brought together 80 young people from 15 European countries in our virtual hackathon Code for Green. They set out to develop creative and innovative solutions using computer science, for example, a tool for monitoring plastic waste in the oceans via the European observation program Copernicus. That shows the potential of environmental data from biodiversity conservation to the expansion of renewable energies. And finally, I want to touch on a key priority during our presidency, which is climate action. During our Council presidency, I want to work towards concluding the deliberations in the Council on the draft of a European climate law, which will specifically write into law the goal for the European Union to become climate neutral by 2050. I also want to reach consensus on an enhanced EU NDC for 2030 under the Paris Agreement, despite the COP26 being postponed to next year. By doing this, the EU would send a clear message to the global community that we firmly stand by the implementation of the Paris Agreement, which calls for updated NDCs by 2020. Today, I collect first reflections by ministers on envisaged new enhanced 2030 targets. Many colleagues indicated that they see the corridor of reduction target between 50 to 55% as a reasonable range for the new NDC. A number of member states expressed their view that the new target should be even more ambitious, and some felt already the 50 to 55% difficult to achieve. I know that there is still a great need for the discussion, and that is why it is important to me to create enough space for this exchange, like in our meeting today. The Commission's impact assessments on raising the 2030 target to 50 to 55%, which is announced for September, will form the basis for other future discussions. Once presented, I will start to facilitate an exchange on it. I have invited my fellow environment ministers to an informal environmental council on the 30th of December and 1st of October in Berlin, and I hope that we can talk face-to-face rather than virtually. The two official environmental councils are planned for the 23rd of October and the 17th of December, and I'm sure that these meetings will be crucial milestones for climate action and environmental protection in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Minister Schulze. And now I pass over to Commissioner Sinkevičius. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all. Good afternoon, Svenja. The coronavirus pandemics had an effect on our working methods. The way we met, the way we meet and discuss our future plans and initiatives. But after yesterday's discussion with environment ministers, I can assure you that it didn't have negative impacts on the European green ambition. During the video conference with environment ministers, we agreed once more that the recovery cannot focus on short-term fixes. We have to stand to the defining challenge of our generation to lead the way to a systemic change, to resilience and sustainability. And we are ready to build back better. And our journey down this green path has already started. The European Green Deal remains our path to sustainable growth. With the adopted strategic initiatives on climate, circular economy, biodiversity, farm to fork, with the new MFF and the Recovery and Resilience Facility, we gave a green light to a concerted response to the crisis. A response that addresses our immediate concerns about the state of our economy and our society, and at the same time works for sustainability and resilience in the long term. I'm truly glad that we are all on this journey together, and there is a strong political will to continue. Yesterday, all the environment ministers made a joint call for a green recovery. We all agree that economic recovery, reforms to promote growth and competitiveness, of course, maintaining and creating good jobs and fostering skills development must go hand in hand with ambitious and cost-effective climate action and environmental protection. Of course, both the Commission and environment ministers have many good ideas how to do so. We are looking forward to developing these sustainable solutions further with the German presidency in the months ahead. We will be also looking for them in the recovery and resilience plans of the member states. At the same time, we all agree that green transformation is not complete without its twin digital transition. We cannot handle these transitions in isolation. They are intertwined, depend on each other, and will need to support each other to get us out stronger from this crisis. On one hand, we are in transition to a carbon neutral, resource efficient and circular economy. We want an economy that does not cause biodiversity loss, mass deforestation and pollution of air, land and sea. On the other hand, we aim to become a global role model for the digital economy. We know the world will continue to digitalize, and we are ready to harness the opportunities and address the challenges that this trend brings along. The common understanding that these two directions can work for the same aim is there in our virtual meeting rooms and our initiatives. And as a result, collaboration between the Commission and the Member States will help to bring the digital, environmental and climate agendas together on the ground. And I have no doubts on that. The Green and Digital Recovery Package and Next Generation EU is a real opportunity to unlock billions of investment and to move forward, reaching climate neutrality by 2050. As Executive Vice President Franz Timmermans elaborated today in the session on climate policy, our actions, decisions, and legislative proposal in the coming months will mark our definitive turn towards the future where the European Green Deal plays a key role. I want to thank once again German presidency and especially Minister Schulze for this opportunity to discuss the key issues of recovery, the twin green and digital transitions, and the way to climate neutrality. I'm looking forward to the work of the presidency on these matters in the coming months. Thank you, and now I'm ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sinkevičius. Exactly now we start with the questions. There are several questions already in the Slido channel. It's mainly in English. I can just repeat, you can also put your questions in German if there's any German journalists among. I know there are some questions also here in the room. In German we start. The catchword was already digitalization. And there's a question from Aminata Nyang from Agence Europe for the Minister. What kind of concrete suggestions the ministers made concerning the green digitalization? Has there been any consensus?
And that was the first discussion about digitalization and environment and sustainability. And we have a lot of ideas from the ministers what we can do on the European level. There was one thing that impressed me very much, that was a digital product passport. If each material, each product have such a digital product passport, it is easier to say how we could recycle it, what is inside, how we could make it stay longer live or stay longer in action. So this was one idea that was given from the Commission. It is part of the Circular Economy Action Plan, and there were a lot of ideas from the ministers how to deal with that, and what are the range of ideas was really great to say what we can do in the member states if we would have such a platform all over Europe that would be very good for waste management, for example, or for the discussion about how to make applications live longer, have a longer life than it has today.
Any additions from the Commissioner to that? Otherwise, I have a question for you. I have a question from Anna Gumbau from Carbon Pulse. Many countries demand an impact assessment for the 2030 target at member state level 2. Is the Commission taking this on board?
Thank you very much for your question. Speaking now, in September, we will come forward with our 2030 climate target and plan a impact assessment, analyzing an increase of the EU's 2030 climate ambition to 50 and towards 55% compared to 1990 levels. And this analysis will allow for an informed discussion on the efforts needed to reach a higher 2030 ambition. The Commission services have been working at high pressure on this analysis, and the public interest in our work is also huge. More than 4,000 stakeholders have replied to our public consultation, and their replies will feed into the analysis. So this 2030 climate target plan will consist of two parts. First, it will increase the EU's climate ambition in 2030 to achieve minus 50 to minus 55% greenhouse gas emission reduction to allow for a more gradual pathway towards climate neutrality. And in this context, the analysis also looks into the implications of the COVID-19 crisis on the climate policy domain, how the analytical tools will be able to capture still needs to be assessed. Also, given the recent nature of the crisis unfolding and the diversity of impacts it will have. Second, it will give indications on the overall policy architecture to deliver on this increased ambition. For example, the type ambition and interaction of relevant policy measures such as the Emissions Trading System Directive, the Effort Sharing Regulation, and others. So the 2030 climate target plan will then be followed by concrete legislative proposal by June 2021. And the Commission will also propose to amend its proposal on the European climate law accordingly to reflect the increased target.
Next question is from Florence Schulze from Tagesspiegel. How will Germany try to get the Eastern European member states on board for a 50 or 55% climate target? A question for the Minister.
Yeah, there is still a debate between the environment ministers about the target. That's normal because that is the first discussion we have in this informal meeting today. And we see that we have a lot of ministers from countries who say they are fine with 50 to 55%. Some are skeptical. These who are skeptical, with them we need to discuss. We need to say why it is so important to get a higher target and what is the help the European Commission will provide to them to reach such a target. Most of them are not so convinced that it is easy for them to reach the target, and it is not easy for everybody, for every country. They need to do more, and I hope that the discussion and that what we discuss now as the just transition mechanism, that this just transition mechanism and the money that is in the just transition fund, that with that we could help the ones who are not convinced yet.
Die nächste Frage jetzt hier im Raum, bitte von Roland Krieg von Hof und Herd, bitte.
Ja, mein Name ist Roland Krieg hier von herdundhof.de. Ich bin Agrarjournalist. Sie haben es gerade schon gesagt, wie schwer es eventuell sein könnte, die osteuropäischen Länder zu überzeugen. Die haben ja gerade im Bereich der Landwirtschaft offenbar auch eher einen ökonomischen Nachholbedarf, während jetzt gegenüber Farm to Fork oder der Biodiversitätsstrategie, während Länder wie Deutschland, Dänemark oder Frankreich mit diesen Strategien leichter zurechtkommen. Und auch da die Frage, wie Sie die osteuropäischen Länder, vor allem die Visegrad-Länder, überzeugen wollen.
Ja, wir haben gerade mit den osteuropäischen Ländern eine sehr gute bilaterale Kooperation in Fragen des Naturschutzes. Wir arbeiten seit vielen, vielen Jahren sehr vertrauensvoll zusammen Und ich hoffe, dass wir über diesen Weg der vertrauensvollen Zusammenarbeit, der Gespräche, der gemeinsamen Strategieentwicklung und gemeinsamen Diskussion über die Biodiversitätsstrategie und die Farm-to-Fork-Strategie, dass es uns da gelingt, auch einen gemeinsamen Konsens zu finden. Wir müssen ja für die Klima-COP für die Biodiversitäts-COP im nächsten Jahr eine gemeinsame Strategie auf der europäischen Ebene haben. Und die Verhandlungen darüber, die beginnen jetzt. Und deswegen ist es so wichtig, dass wir uns auch bei der Biodiversitätsstrategie jetzt möglichst zeitnah einigen, damit wir mit einer gemeinsamen europäischen Strategie, mit einer gemeinsamen europäischen Stimme dann auch in die internationalen Verhandlungen gehen können. Und ich setze auf die wirklich guten bilateralen Kontakte, die wir über viele, viele Jahre haben.
Another question from Agence Europe, from Aminata Nyang to you both. Any reaction to the last report of Court of Auditors on weak EU measures to protect wild pollinators? This is her question. Does any one of you want to comment that report?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. And of course, first, let me start by saying that the Commission is committed to the protection of pollinators and welcomes the audit on the protection of wild pollinators in the EU by the European Court of Auditors. And the Commission recognizes that there is room for improvement and takes note of the areas highlighted by the court where further action is needed. The European Green Deal increases the ambition to reverse the decline of pollinators. The recently adopted biodiversity and farm-to-fork strategies show the very concrete steps for that. The EU Pollinators Initiative sets long-term objectives towards 2030 and short-term actions for the conservation of pollinators. And most of these actions will be implemented by the end of this year, while some will continue through the period of 2021 to 2027. The Commission will review the actions on EU Pollinators Initiative by the end of this year, consult experts and stakeholders, and assess if and how further actions should be deployed in those areas where needed.
Another question to the current development at EU ETS. EU ETS prices are at their highest since 2006, despite the crisis, but appears to be largely due to speculators. This is a question, this is coming from Anna Gumbauer from Carbon Pulse again. How does Minister Schulze assess to that?
Yes, we see in ETS today higher prices, and I think that the investors, that all the companies, that the industry is aware about the discussion we have to enhance our NDC, and that they expect that we will do more than we have agreed now. Now is the target minus 40%, and the new target is 50 to 55%. And I think that the industry expect that we do more, and that we see that in the price we have in ETS today.
Another try from Kate Abnett from Reuters concerning the new 2030 targets. Did any countries say a 50% target is too ambitious?
May I? Oh,
yes,
ja. Ich würde gerne ins Deutsche wechseln. Das war heute eine erste offene Diskussion unter allen Ministern. Wir haben das extra nicht öffentlich gemacht, weil wir eine erste vertrauliche, offene Diskussion wollten. Und deswegen war die Range war bis zwischen denen, die gesagt haben, 55 ist ihnen zu wenig, eine ganze Menge Staaten, die gesagt haben, dass sie das Ziel teilen, und Staaten, die Schwierigkeiten beschrieben haben, so ein Ziel zu erreichen. Also das war die Range sozusagen, in der wir uns bewegt haben.
And there is another question again to the impact assessment. for you, Mr. Commissioner. Again, the question, I think the colleague didn't really understand. Is there any impact assessment for each member state or only for the European Union as a whole? Just for clarifying that.
Thank you for the question and letting me to top it up. So it's the impact assessment is going for the Union as a whole, but each member state is preparing its own plans, how they're going to decrease the CO2 emissions, in which ways, which sectors are the most targeted, and this, of course, has to be linked with the funding and upcoming projects. But to be very precise, the impact assessment is done on the whole European Union.
Okay, thank you very much. That were the questions so far. I have no other question here in the Slido chat. So we are very good in time. Thank you very much, Minister Schulze. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinkevičius, to Brussels. We are very happy that the connection was so well. I hope you had also a good connection with us. Thank you, everybody in the background, for making this event happening, technically seen so smoothly. And then goodbye for today.
Thank you.